ain't nothing to it. Go ahead and bring a lot on. Ain't no giant, I ain't gon' fire on. Catch a fade, you I'm warm, I'm gone. Y'all can catch the wave that I am on. I am icon, y'all are wide wrong. Think that I'm a reconcile ball, so ain't nothing to it though. This is on me, ain't got much to do with who you though. Keeping it true to form to the L's into a milli though. But they already knew that those farewell to your opinions. Know that he is something. This is all me, ain't got much to do with who you know. Yeah, keeping it true to form, but they already knew that though. Here we go.
Hello, I am Travis Berardi, your host for this week's edition of the Saturday Pigskin, the Week 6 edition of the Saturday Pigskin. I'm filling in for Brian Skoronsky, who I believe is Eric Will's date to a wedding up in Shelby right now. And because of that, we have Effie James filling in for him, as well as Curt Conrad. Curt Conrad from the Richland Source. Effie James, you can listen to him along with Andy Jardy every week on our football calls. Guys, I can't believe it, but we're already done with the regular season.
It's time, and it's everybody in this year. Unlike past years, everyone who wants to be a playoff team can be a playoff team this year, and that's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah, it's fun, man. I enjoy it, and I was talking to Andy last night about it. I was like, the greatest thing that I think has come from this is the fact that the OHSAA figured out how to get all teams into a playoff, which is interesting because now, no matter how bad you struggled, it's a second opportunity. So I think that's fun for kids and coaches alike. Everybody enjoys more football.
And we will get into that more as we go on with the episode. But first, let's take a look at the Friday that was in the Run Back, brought to you by Spherion Mid-Ohio. We start with the game I called last night, Cary at Winford, battle of 4-1s for second place in the N10. Second quarter, Cary up 17-3, and the Royals will answer. Dustin Brady finds Kendall Blair for the 8-yard score. That makes it 17-10. And then the next Royal possession, Brady will go to the air again. He had 244 yards through the air, and 63 of them came on this hook up to Lucas Hackworth. He goes to the house. Extra point no good, however. It's 17-16 at the break. Second half, and Cary starts to pull away. Cade Crawford up the middle, nearly untouched for the 20-yard score. It's 24-16. Then after the ensuing kickoff was fumbled back to Cary, Blue Devils extend the lead. Derek Lonsway finds Anthony Bell on the slant in the end zone. Royals score, but it's not enough late as Cary wins 31-23. Moving down State Route 19 to Gallion, where the Tigers look to rebound against Lucas, and they get off to a great start. First play from scrimmage, Wilson Frankhouse finds Hanif Donaldson 71 yards on the post. It's 7-0, but the Cubs immediately answer. Grant Barrett goes in from a yard out, and we're tied at 7. Late first quarter now, and Frankhouse, with plenty of time, finds Donaldson once again, this time from 16 yards out. It's 14-7. They lead 17-13 at the break. Then third quarter, and Frankhouse keeps it, and look at the effort from the senior as he will not be denied the score. Gallion gets the big win, 24-13. Now to Richland County in the battle at the top of the MOAC. Marshall Shepard finds Connor Hankel for the 21-yard score. It's 7-0. Then less than a minute later, Shepard will keep it himself and work his way 15 yards for the score. It's 14-0 Whippets. Second quarter, and Owen Fisher will not be denied the goal line. That makes it 24-0. Then Shepard will add 2 more touchdown passes. The first to a sliding Blaine Bowman for 41 yards right here. Then he finds Carson Ingram for the 26-yard strike. Shelby rolls to 6-0, 45-21. We now head to Howard in the Devil Dog Showdown, and it did not disappoint. A defensive battle for both teams, and they had a chance to score, and it would remain 0-0 until 9 seconds left here in the first half. Levi Lyons from Danville scores from a yard out, extra point no good. It's 6-0 at the half. Opening possession of the second half, Peyton Lester finds Weston Mielek on the out pattern. He then takes it 38 yards inside the 10. Then a few plays later, he would finish things off, scoring from a yard out. 7-6 East Knox. Final seconds now. Danville with one last chance. A desperation heave, and it will fall to the grass. East Knox pulls out the win 7-6 for second place in the KMAC. Now to Arlen Field, where it was senior night for the TY Tigers, hosting West Holmes and the Knights. But the Knights strike first. Zach Snyder finds Jesse Bayless from 3 yards out. It's 7-0. Second quarter, and the Tigers answer in a big way. Brock Hill finds Avion Gross, who makes one man miss. And then there he goes down the sidelines. Will he get to the end zone? Yes, he will. We're even at 7. Third quarter, senior up 3, and Hill will go to the air again. He finds Tashandre Hall out of the backfield for the 12-yard score as he plows a defender at the goal line. Senior wins at 17-7. They get Southview next week at home in the first round of the playoffs. Staying in the OCC, Ashland looking to finish 6-0, traveling to West Holmes, and the Knights strike first. Ashland strikes first, actually. Declan Rower to Jonathan Metzger for the 3-yard score. Ashland leads 14-0 at the break, but the Knights answer in a big way. Peyton McKinney on the run finds Tucker Kaufman for the 6-yard score. Then McKinney again would find Braden Myers on the slant for the 15-yard score. Then it's McKinney again, this time on the ground into the end zone. West Holmes scores 35 straight for the 35-14 victory. And finally, to our game of the week, up at the Marsh in Monroeville, taking on St. Paul, and the Flyers get on the board first. Will Stieber finds Adam Baker wide open for the 19-yard score. Then it's Camden Krabs off the right side, the left side, for the 8-yard score. Monroeville would then have an answer. Merritt Key with the halfback pass and trickeration finds Trevor Schaefer. They would cash in later after this play, but it's their only score as St. Paul pulls away. Stieber finds a wide open Baker once again, this time for 46 yards. Flyers win 28-7, creating a 3-way tie for the Firelands Conference Championship with Monroeville and Crestview, who also won last night over Plymouth. And that is the run back brought to you by Spherion Mid-Ohio. So guys, like we said, week 6, regular season pretty much over. We will have some games for teams that opted out. We have some games for teams that might lose in the playoffs in the first couple of weeks. They'll play some more. But honestly, this is the last week of the regular season per se. But what surprised you guys about these 6 weeks?
Well, I think the biggest thing that surprised me so far is how well the teams dealt with. All these things that, that comes up. This is by far obviously not a regular season. But I think, what I saw from coaches and players is the desire to play so much that they went to extreme levels. I think about this, practicing, but you can't give the kids water. Kids got to bring their own water. All the elements that they had to go through in order to get on the field.
You can't even use the locker room.
Right, you can't use all these things that these teams had to go through, and I was impressed because I honestly thought there's no way there's no way you're going to be able to get these teenage kids to abide by all of these rules and guidelines and yet still play a season. But, kudos to these coaches and players. They wanted to play and they done what was necessary. And football felt like football. When I was at games, it really felt like a real season. So, I'm surprised, but I am also impressed by the way the kids and the staffs handle those.
Yeah, and 6 weeks ago when we were talking to some coaches in the preseason, they all agreed, there's just going to be some risks that you're going to have to be okay with taking.
Right.
The kids are going to have to be okay with it, the coaching staff, and more importantly, maybe the kids' parents, who might be a little bit more susceptible to this thing. To everyone's credit, they were able to do the things that needed to be done so that the high school kids could feel like high school kids even if only for 6 or 7 weeks here.
Yeah, and I think it's really good that we had the football season because these players take it on themselves. I can't go out. I can't go party. I can't go out with my friends because I don't want to get sick and create something for my team where we might miss 2 or 3 weeks. So I think having these team sports here for these high school teams actually helped the players out better and kind of, helped save them from possibly getting this virus. I know Mount Gilead, a couple schools still got it. I mean, it's unfortunate, but really, I think playing this season actually helped more than hurt.
And talk about, coaches love to talk about teaching life lessons to kids.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
you can't teach a better lesson about being a good teammate than dealing with something like this. I mean,
Absolutely.
you were not only responsible for yourself here. I mean, you were responsible for your teammates too.
Absolutely. And, to look at the way that these coaches, number one, fought so hard for these kids. You saw a lot of them were talking in the media about wanting to play and doing whatever it takes. And, that was huge to me. And as far as on the field goes, I'm really impressed. I came in and we done a show early and we were talking about what to expect and what to look for. And my thing was I wanted to see how the Tigers and the Cubs would respond the year after such a big run. And, looking at it, of course, Mansfield struggled in some games and they don't have the record they'd like to. Lucas has lost a couple, but overall you can tell they're still winning programs, and neither one of them, I think, just completely fell apart. And so the fan bases are still there. So what stood out to me is the fact that football is still, A1 around here. You know what I mean? This is a football community, and the people love it, and the kids love playing it, and coaches love coaching it. So that was big for me.
Yeah, and just to echo what F is saying, I mean, it's you don't take for, I mean, you kind of take for granted maybe that those two teams got 5 extra weeks of practice last fall, and that turned into a very big deal here when they lost all of their preseason this year.
Right.
Sticking with this, but were there any teams or any players that really stuck out to you in these 6 weeks?
Well, I mean, if we're talking just strictly about the football, I was surprised that Lucas has been able to do what they did this year, and that's certainly not, I mean, that was a generational class that they lost last year, just like senior high lost a generational class. It's a little bit more, I think it's more devastating to lose a class and you're at a Division 7 school, when there's fewer guys to choose from. But, I mean, I don't think we appreciate enough what Lucas has done here. I mean, they're playing in a Division 4 conference, and that's like, as a Division 7 school playing in D4, it's like all those D4 schools going to play Cleveland St. Ignatius one week, and then, well, you can play Solon next week or St. Ed's the next week. I mean, that's a huge jump, and to do it every week, I know Lucas has kind of stubbed its toe here the last couple weeks, but, I mean, to do that week in and week out, it's has been very impressive as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and for me, I can't believe the Shelby quarterback's name is escaping me right now. Shepard, but his play to me has really stood out. Like and watching Shelby play, and I'm of course I'm somewhat akin to quarterbacks, but I watched that kid play, and his development, even throughout this shortened season, has to me been the difference. And Shelby is, kind of the class of this area right now in football, and I think he has everything to do with it. His play, to me, has been tremendous, and to watch him run that offense, and Shelby, right now looks as good as they have. So he really surprised me this year with his overall development and the fact that he's been able to do so well at that position for that team.
And he's completed that offense. The first couple weeks, it was all Owen Fisher putting up huge numbers.
Right.
He gets a little bit dinged up, and then Marshall Shepard just takes the ball and continues the role. That Shelby team as a whole, really scary to deal with, and it's going to be exciting to see them as the weeks go on in the playoffs, because I really think they're going to be able to take a big run for that. All right, we're going to take our first break. When we come back, we will show last week's Friday Night Phenom and our 5 nominees for this week when we return on the Saturday Pigskin. Back here on the Saturday Pigskin, Travis Berardi filling in for Brian Skoronski, who I believe is doing the electric slide with Eric Will right now up at Shelby at a wedding. But anyway, let's get to our Friday night phenoms. But first, let's take a look at last week's winner. And last week's winner, Peyton Lester from East Knox. Huge performance for him. He got 90 votes. 53% of all the votes out of 170. So Peyton Lester, he did it pretty much through the air. 3 touchdowns, as well as getting some rushing yards as East Knox just rolled Mount Gilead. And the Bulldogs, the number 2 team in their region. So now we've seen last week's winner. Let's take a look at the nominees for this week's Friday Night Phenom, brought to you by Spherion Mid-Ohio. Our first nominee, and it comes from a losing squad, actually. It's Dustin Brady, but it was a pretty darn good night for him last night. 15 of 31 passing, 244 yards through the air, 3 touchdowns. He also rushed for 59 yards and recovered a fumble on defense. He now has over 1,500 yards passing, as well as 300 yards on the ground, and he's one of the favorites for Player of the Year in the Northern 10, along with some of the boys at Colonel Crawford, but he's a stud, Effie.
Yeah, you know, anytime we've seen a lot of quarterbacks that are dual threats, and right now he is playing well, and that stat line is incredible actually. But the quarterbacks who are also able, the 59 yards rushing he had last week is also just as important as the 244 passing. So that's impressive.
Yeah, so our first nominee, Dustin Brady, quarterback of the Wintford Royals, who are the 7th seed, and they will have a bye for the playoffs. Our second nominee, Wilson Frankhouse, who he didn't throw the ball much, but when he did, it mattered. 7 of 13 passing for 168 yards, 2 scores. He also added a great rushing score that you'll see more in depth later in the show, but he's pretty much been the glue that's kept this squad together after a couple tough losses, Curt.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's not a surprise for anyone who was paying attention last year. He had a huge year for him last year. Has continued that this year. It certainly helped to have the number 17 back this year, or this week, I should say. He's a real talented guy, but I mean, Wilson does a good job. I think he does a really good job for him defensively as well.
And I saw him when they played Clear Fork down at the Corral, and he pretty much kept that team in the game. Clear Fork nearly with the upset, but Gallion with the double overtime winner. And a major reason of that was because of Wilson Frankhouse, who's had a pretty good season. Now, the Gallion Tigers, they seem like they're firing on all cylinders again. You never know, they could make a run deep in the playoffs in their division.
Yeah, and this was a really good win for Gallion last night, I thought. I mean, you're playing a Division 7 school, but I mean, still to get
it's Lucas
headed back in the right direction here come postseason time.
Definitely. Nominee number 3 is from the Mansfield Senior TY Tigers. Quarterback Brock Hill, who did it all against Mount Vernon Effie. 10 of 15 passing, 130 yards, 2 scores. He also carried the ball for 51 yards. You've seen him a lot this year. Yeah. Just go into depth about him.
Well, I think, Brock, the biggest thing that I thought he's improved is his overall decision making. And early on in the season, I thought he forced a lot of things. He forced a lot of throws. But this year, he's gotten, or later in the season, he's gotten so much better at making better choices. He knows when to put his head down and get yards. He had a good rushing game last night, but he is making quick decisions, and has a knack for making big plays like this one, the pass to Avion Groves. His growth as a first-year starter in that offense has meant everything to that offense that has played a little bit inconsistent at times, but when they have played well, it's been because he's played well. And his overall decision-making has gotten a lot better.
Yeah, and slowly but surely this offense starting to get going for the TY Tigers as they go into the playoffs in that first round next week at home. To nominee number 4, and a player who pretty much did all the damage in the second half against Ashland, and that's West Holmes quarterback Peyton McKinney, who threw for 301 yards 3 scores, then added 53 rushing yards and 2 more scores as the Knights outscore the Arrows 35-0 in the second half for a statement victory. And Effie, once again, you've seen him in week 1 as he threw all over the Tigers.
Right. And the impressive thing to see is how consistent he is. He's an efficient guy. He actually, I thought, even from game 1, I thought he saw the field better than a lot of quarterbacks that I've seen, you know, and I think with his continual play and being, you know, his team playing well and getting that big win last night was huge, and I think with him as the offensive leader, I think that makes all the difference.
And there was a time not so long ago when they didn't throw the ball a lot down in Millersburg. They were a wing T team under the Maltriches, and that, I mean, to have a guy back there calling the shots, that makes you pretty dangerous here in week 7 going forward.
Yeah, and to watch him run that offense, and you know, he's got the leverage to either, you know, you can see him making audibles. He's got full control at this stage of the season of that offense, and because of that, they are rolling. They are even different now than they were earlier in the season, and it's because of his passing and his development overall through the season.
And West Holmes, they will open up next week at home against Madison. And I believe, wasn't that Madison that had a big rally in the second half, almost defeated West Holmes a couple weeks ago?
Yeah, I believe so. I wasn't there that night, but yeah, they gave them all they wanted.
Our final nominee comes from St. Paul running back Camden Cribbs, who continues to run over Fireland's conference defenses, going for 118 yards on the ground on 24 carries, while adding a score as yet again the Flyers get a piece of the conference championship. And that's pretty much been their mantra, Curt, for St. Paul, just ground and pound.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's not exactly a well-guarded secret up there. I mean, they have done what they've done for a long time, and they've done it very successfully. This year is no different. I mean, it's not unusual to see a St. Paul team hoisting a Firelands Conference championship.
Yeah, and the last couple of years they've had to share it. Last year, I believe, well, they didn't share it. It was actually Western Reserve that won it outright. But this year, they finally get back at that piece with Monroeville and Crestview after falling to Western Reserve again. So St. Paul going into that Division 7 postseason with a bye, but you know, down the road they're going to probably have to face a tough Lucas Cubs squad. So it's going to be interesting to see that bracket, but we'll talk about that more in our final segment of the show. But our final nominee, Camden Cribbs from St. Paul. And those were the Friday Night Phenoms nominations, brought to you by Spheron Mid-Ohio. All right, we're going to take another break, and when we come back, we will show last week's top play of the week and this week's nominations for the top 5 plays when we return on the Saturday Pigskin. Back here on the Saturday Pigskin Week 6 final regular season edition, I guess you could say. Travis Berardi alongside Effie James and Curt Conrad. And now time for the top 5 plays and our play of the week winner. So let's go to last week's winner. Drum roll, please. And it will go to Shane Knepp of East Knox. 58-yard punt return touchdown. I called this down the right side, got a couple blocks, cuts back, and scores. And folks down in Howard, they got the sweep last week with the Phenom winner and the top plays. He received 77 votes, 35% of 219 total votes. So your Spherion Mid-Ohio Play of the Week, Shane Knepp from East Knox High School. And now time to unveil our top 5 nominees for this week's Spherion Mid-Ohio Play of the Week. We begin in Galleon, where Wilson Frankhouse is doing some yard work. He plows 2 defenders, somehow keeps his balance, and dives for the score as the Tigers finish the regular season with a big dub over Lucas. And just what a physical, athletic play there, Effie.
And I think sometimes when some athletes can just smell the score. You know what I mean? They just want extra yards, and they refuse to go down. And that's a special trait that not all athletes have, and he's a good one.
He actually went horizontal there,
right,
and somehow was able to land on his feet and then dive into the end zone, which pretty much put the game away as Galleon defeated Lucas 24-13. Staying in Crawford County, where quarterback from Winford, Dustin Brady, is going to take to the air to Lucas Hackworth, who says, "Get off me," to the defender, 63 yards to the house. And like we said with Dustin Brady, really good player over there, Winford Curt, but Hackworth, one of the main reasons why he's putting up so many yards.
Yeah, sometimes you just got to rely on your athletes to go make a play. And I think in that situation right there, that's just a kid going up and taking the ball away from a defensive back. A real nice job.
Tough loss there for Winford against Cary to finish at 4-2 on the year, but their 2 losses to Crawford, who was a number 2 seed, Northern 10 champions, and then Cary, who's going to be in their Division 6 bracket, a tough out. Now to our game of the week for the Firelands Championship. Eagles with some trickery. Merrick Heat takes to the toss, then throws to wide open Trevor Schaefer. That sets up Monroeville's only score of the night, as St. Paul, however, wins it and creates a 3-way split of the Firelands. But who doesn't love trickery, Effie?
Yeah, I am a big fan of the dual option, any kind of dual option where a guy could run or pass. And, Merrick Heat really, and the left-handed throws always are interesting to me. It just doesn't seem like he should be able to throw that far, but he made a great throw, he made a great catch, and it ended up being a key play in that game.
And guess what, Winford fans? You get another nominee. Brady rolls right and throws to Caden Blair, who avoids one tackle and trots into the end zone. Now, this may look like a normal touchdown reception to most of you folks, but let's take this again in slow motion. Blair's momentum actually taking him to the opposite direction away from the ball, but he's able to reach back and make the catch, then spin away from a defender for 6. So a little bit of a tougher play there, but he gets it done. Finally, we head to Arlen Field. Brock Hill throws it up to University of Pittsburgh commit Avion Gross, makes the catch down the sideline, avoids the tackler, and he's off to the races to the 1, dives in, and he scores as the Tigers head into the postseason with a little bit of momentum, Effie.
Yeah, and this was an interesting play because it was one of those plays where there wasn't a whole lot of checking. Brock Hill dropped back, he made a throw, he was confident, and up until this point, the Tigers were really struggling offensively. They hadn't moved the ball, and that play right there, to me, is what propelled them to the win. So that was a big play by a big-time player.
A pretty good week for Avion Gross.
Definitely. Yeah, he committing to the University of Pittsburgh. It kind of bums me out since I'm a Mountaineer fan, and that's our hated rival, kind of like Michigan Ohio State, but we'll talk about that some other time. Anywho, the top 5 plays of the week brought to you by Spherion Mid-Ohio. All right, we're going to take our final break of the night, but when we come back, it's time to talk playoffs. Playoffs! Yeah, it's only week 7, we think, but They're going to start this Friday and Saturday, so when we return, we'll talk about that right here on the Saturday Pigskin. Back here, final segment of the Saturday's Pigskin, live and free on the OH.Report. Effie James asked me after the first segment, we're live? Yes, we are this year. I forgot that Effie was on when we taped it last year. So, yeah, we're live, Effie. So, smile for the camera. Everybody's watching you right now. Cool. But anyway, we're going to go right into playoffs and into the brackets. And since Effie, Mansfield Senior, well, we're going to start in Division III, Region 10, as the Mansfield Senior Tigers, they're going to take on Southview.
Yeah, and I think, having another home game is huge for this young Tiger team and being able to try to play their best game toward the end of the season is going to be huge. And I think extra incentive is the fact that if they win the game, they get another crack at Ashland.
That's the big thing,
that's a huge incentive for them to play their best game for this week.
Yeah, and that I think, Mansfield Senior be chomping at the bit because it was such a good game against Ashland, too. It was a defensive battle. 14-0, I believe, was the final score. A couple other games down here. West Holmes, Madison. Madison seen them. It was a tough way to end. They only lost by, I believe, 4 points, but they got down early, Curt. Fought their way back. But with this Madison, you saw them last night against Lexington. Do you think they have a chance against West Holmes, especially what West Holmes did against Ashland this week?
It's certainly, West Holmes is going to be the favorite in that game, but they played them tough once before, and it's just Madison's getting, they're getting closer. They're getting closer and closer. They take 2 steps forward, and when I spoke to Dave Stupka last night, that's what he said. But they were able to compete for a couple games, and then last night they struggled a little bit. That happens with a young team, and at some point, you got to get over that hump, and that's what they're waiting for.
Yeah, and Curt can attest. I've been saying probably for, the last 2 or 3 years, the area of football is just better when Madison is competitive.
I couldn't agree more.
And I really believe that. And I am been a guy that's been rooting for them to get better and get their program back on track, because they have such a rich tradition of football. And the area, to me, is just better when they're competitive.
Yeah, and just one more thing on this bracket: Sandusky, a 17 seed. I can't believe that they dropped so much from last year, because they're one of those schools that you think can just reload every year.
Right. And I think, and to be honest, I believe, Mansfield and Sandusky, they're neighboring, they're like mirroring communities. And so they have mirroring talent, and they're going to have years where they're up. The Tigers had a great squad, great class last year. This year, younger guys are having to play, and Sandusky is that same type of talent. But the thing is, every game, you're one play away from the big play. And Sandusky is always going to have that type of talent and capability. So even though they may be a 17 seed, the second season can bring about a lot of things for a lot of these teams.
Yeah, and when the brackets came out, I said, I wouldn't want to be a team that's playing a lower seeded Mansfield senior team. Sure. I feel the same way about Sandusky. I mean, they're going to line up, and they're going to have some athletic kids out there. And do you really want to? I mean, that's a risk that I wouldn't want to take if I'm a head football coach.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Now moving on to Division 4, Region 14, that's where we have the likes of Gallion, Shelby, Ontario. Gallion will host Lutheran West on Saturday at 7 o'clock. The winner gets Bellevue. Curt, what do you think about Gallion now after they had that rebound victory against Lucas?
Yeah, I had seen them a week or two earlier when they played Shelby, and they didn't compete that night, and their coach was none too thrilled about that. I mean, they were short some guys. They had guys who were sidelined for injuries or for suspensions. Those guys they're getting healthy. They're getting some kids back. To beat a really good Lucas team, that kind of propels you to where you want to be here. I mean, it's certainly not going to be any walk in the park if they were to win that first round game. Then you get the number 1 seed. But I mean, who wouldn't want the opportunity to get there?
Right. And I think the opportunity is what the playoffs are all about. And a lot of things can change a football game. Weather, injury. A lot of things could change a football game. So. I think that the fact that they were able to rebound after a disappointing effort says a lot about the team, the staff, and their willingness to correct mistakes and get better.
Yeah, and sticking with this, if anybody out there watching right now on our Facebook or YouTube channels, you have any questions about the playoffs you'd like us to answer, feel free to put that in the comments section, and we'll try and pull them up. Sticking with Region 14 on the other half of that top bracket, Ontario hosting Vermilion. The winner gets Kenton, but Ontario, they've really come around. You've seen the offense as of late, but the defense is starting to pick it up as well, and they're starting to be one of those complete teams, Curt.
Yeah, and I may have been a person who wouldn't have suspected that Ontario would be hosting a first-round playoff game, but good for them. I mean, it's good to see them kind of turn the corner and get things pointed in the right direction, and they have built from week 1 to week 6. I think they're a much better team now than they were in week 1.
Yeah, to me they looked a lot more competitive. I've seen Ontario a couple times this year as compared to last year even. To me, they feel like they come into the games now feeling like we could win every game, and you can't teach that. That is something that your preparation and your individual players come together as a team, and they build that culture like we can win every game. And now you watch Ontario play, they play with a lot of confidence. They got guys that can make big plays. They play physical, and all of a sudden you got a team that can play with anybody right now. I've been really impressed with the way they've been playing lately.
Yeah, and if they can get past Vermilion, get past Kenton, a possible matchup in the quarterfinal against Bellevue, kind of like a Shelby squad, and they played pretty well against Shelby in week 1, so that'll be something to look forward to. Move down in the bracket, the Clear Fork Colts, a 20 seed, heading up to Edison to take on Milan Edison, a 13 seed. But Clear Fork, they're an interesting squad as of late, especially. They have the kind of that two-headed monster as of late. Yeah. They beat both Pleasant and Harding down in Marion. So I just think with that defense that they have as well that can play really good at times, and the offense now picking it up, I think they could turn some heads here in the playoffs, Effie.
Yeah, and I think, I've seen them actually play a couple games, and I had the opportunity to speak with Coach Carroll. He loves coaching this group. I mean, they are not, the teams he's had in the past, but they're young and they're learning, and through their struggles, they have been in every game. They've competed hard. played hard, and myself and Andy actually called the Pleasant game, and that was a physical football game. And they just had guys that said, look, we are refusing to lose tonight. So they, I think they're another team that, I just don't want to see, you don't want to see those teams that have that winning culture.
Right.
And they may not be, their record may not show it, but the second season is all about now this is a place we've been, we are comfortable in the playoffs, and we have an advantage over some teams that may not have that level of comfort playing in these second season type of games.
And tradition is absolutely something you can draw on this time of year.
Sure.
I mean, they've been there, they've done it in the past. There's no reason to think that, if you're a Clear Fork Colt this year, there's no reason to think that you can't go into the playoffs and upset a team or two.
Yeah, and so the top of that bracket in Region 14 filled 3 MOAC teams. On the bottom half, that's where you find Shelby, the number 2 seed, and they have a pretty nice path. Upper Sandusky plays Firelands, the winner plays Napoleon. Shelby gets the winner of Rossford and Triway, but I think their major test would probably come in the semifinal when Huron, they take on the number 3 seed Huron. But I think Shelby has for the team that they have a pretty decent path, at least to the regional semifinal, and then possibly a final against Bellevue.
Yeah, absolutely. And as explosive as they are offensively, what I really like about Shelby is the defense. They have a great linebacking core. Their defensive line does a great job. I mean, and at this time of year, ask any coach, they'll tell you it's all about playing defense right now.
Absolutely, and can you stop? And the thing I like about Shelby's team overall, other than the culture they built, is the fact that they just play so physical. They're almost, they seem like they play like a team who is, they're always like that bigger brother physically, and they are a complete team. They have great depth, and they're going to be tough for anyone to beat. And when I watch them play, I'm thinking, like, what are their weaknesses? You know what I mean? Like, you got to try to find a weakness, but when their defense starts to step up, they are going to be extremely tough to beat.
And that is as talented a group of receivers at the Division IV level as you
yeah.
might see, certainly in the area and maybe in the state. I mean, They got 4 guys who could all be number 1 receivers.
Absolutely.
And they got a quarterback who can distribute really well.
And I'd be wrong if I failed to mention the Clyde Flyers. They're an 11 seed. I mean, they're right in that spot where they were last year before they won a state championship. They're on the bottom, the complete bottom of the bracket. They would play Wauseon in the second round, and possibly Huron. So look out for the Clyde Flyers. Maybe you'll see a rematch with them and Shelby in the regional semifinal. I know Shelby was chomping at the bit to get back at them after they knocked Shelby out of the playoffs last year. We're going to take a look at one more regional bracket, and that is Division 7, Region 25. That's the bracket that the Lucas Cubs are in. Lucas, the number 2 seed, but the top seed is Warren JFK. They will play the winner of Lowellville and Youngstown Valley Christian. The winner of those games in the quarterfinals is the winner of Norwalk St. Paul and Southern. Both of those teams got a bye. That's the 8-9 matchup. Down a little bit further, you have Plymouth, the 13 seed, taking on Lisbon David Anderson. The winner gets Dalton. I heard Dalton's a really good squad out of the Wayne County Athletic League. But just thoughts on St. Paul. I mean, they're typically the team that runs through the regular season, but then has some problems once you get into the playoffs.
Yeah, and the playoffs are such a different animal. I mean, it's and it's certainly no attack on the Firelands Conference by any stretch of the imagination, but when you look at a team like Dalton, who plays in the Wayne County Athletic League, and by all accounts, that's a little tougher of a small school conference than the Firelands. And I know the people over at Hillsdale, and they tell me all the time, what we do in the Wayne County League during the regular season prepares us for anything that we might run into in the Division 6 or Division 7 tournament.
And Hillsdale, not a good record in this regular season, but they still had a medium seed. I believe they're like a 12 or a 14.
Right.
So that just tells that these coaches that seeded respect the Wayne County Athletic League.
Yeah, and Hillsdale's 3 losses were, I think, to Dalton, Norwayne, and Northwestern, which were all, really solid small school teams. So, I mean, yeah, the Wayne County Athletic League certainly prepares you for anything that you encounter in the Division 7 postseason, and so does playing in the MOAC, and that's what the Lucas Cubs are bringing to the table. The one time they played a Division 7 team this year, they won 42-0. So I think that tells you everything you need to know about playing like-sized schools for them.
They defeated Troy Christian in that matchup. Bottom part of the upper bracket, Fairport Harding taking on South Central. Winner gets Malvern. Now to the bottom part of the bracket, there's those Lucas Cubs, the number 2 seed. They get the winner of Cuyahoga Heights and Mapleton. Mapleton, they're an interesting squad. I mean, they took Western Reserve to double overtime. Western Reserve turns around and defeats St. Paul. So Mapleton, maybe they can get a win out of this matchup.
And Mapleton's not very far removed from being a second-round playoff team. It was when Rob Mahaney, the coach at
last year.
Shelby,
He had a state player of the year.
He was at Mapleton, and they played it. They were not a team that anyone wanted to see in the playoffs because they had some talent. And again, we go back to that tradition. I mean, theirs certainly isn't what Clear Forks is, but if you've had some success in the playoffs in the recent future or in the recent past, there's no reason to think that you can't do it again.
Sure, and I think that coaching has a lot to do with that. Of course, the players have to play, but getting your players mentally prepared to go into the second season. Because naturally, they're going to be worn down by the regular season. I don't care how short it is. Your regular season physically wears you down. So as a coach, the challenge that you have is to try to get your kids rejuvenated and do things. We used to do things like we change up practice schedules, we change up times, we do things differently just to get the kids rejuvenated and to reinforce that, like, this is a new season for us.
And on the bottom part, right below that, Monroeville and Independence both getting byes. The winner takes on most likely Lucas, and I know we were talking to Monroeville's head coach on Wednesday or Thursday, I believe. We were up there, and he's saying, we love the opportunity. We're going to get a high seed, but I just really hope we don't play Lucas in the first couple rounds. We'd like to make a run. And
right.
sorrowfully, they're going to take on the Cubs most likely in the quarterfinal. And then at the bottom, you have Buckeye Central. They're taking on Wellsville. They got to drive back to the Ohio Valley, where I'm from. It's about a 2.5 hour drive to Wellsville. They got to take them on. I know Buckeye Central, congratulations to them getting their first win in 54 tries when they beat Bucyrus a couple weeks back. But that'll be a tough one for them.
They might be better off chartering a flight
right? Yeah.
that far away. Yeah, no,
so
it's,
those drives
that's
back
a haul.
home, I play a couple, some podcasts and stuff, and it's still not enough. It's a long drive. And I know the people down in Howard, Ohio, they're not in this bracket, but they're in their bracket, East Knox. Number 2 seed, they'll take on the winner of Toronto and Tuscarawas Catholic. That's back in the Ohio Valley. But the matchup I'm looking for that is if East Knox can win a couple games, they would possibly take on the number 7 seed Shady Side Tigers, which is a team I played in high school. They're a storied team back in the Ohio Valley on that side, but that'd be a game I would most likely be looking forward to a couple weeks down the line. But
I haven't seen the bracket. I don't think anyone would be brokenhearted if they saw another Devil Dog game, Danville and East Knox playing at some point. That'd be an awful lot of fun.
Both of those teams have byes in their bracket. But now that we've talked a little bit about these brackets, guys, who do you think is going to make a deep run?
Until proven otherwise, I think that the Lucas Cubs, I would not want to be at Division 7, not just in the region, anywhere in the state, with the exception of maybe Marion Local out in Maria Stein. I wouldn't want to play the Lucas. I mean, they're so physical and they do what they do and they do it so well. Yeah. And and we talked a little bit about this last year. They not only beat you, they steal your soul. I mean, they run at you and run at you and run at you until you absolutely tap out and don't want to tackle them anymore.
And I think that Lucas is. I think they might be the easy answer here, but the truth of the matter is they have. Football comes down to a couple things and a lot of plays and a lot of, coaches spend a lot of time figuring out ways to score and stop teams from scoring. But at the core of it, you got to have tough kids. Mm-hmm. And what Lucas has is a group of tough individuals on their football team and in their football program.
Blue collar team.
And
yeah.
That's what it comes down to. So, they say, well, how can you be that good year after year? Because it is bred in them. And Coach Spittler has done a tremendous job of being able to just infect that area with that culture of winning and being tough and wanting to be, I stopped by a practice last year. You just see the little kids run around with the Lucas Cub jerseys on, and you're thinking they're always going to be good because they're always going to have tough kids. And then you put around them the type of talent that they have in the winning tradition. I'm telling you, if I'm in Division 7, I don't care who I am. I do not want to play them, and because they're tough and because they've got that winning stigma about their program.
And it's fascinating what he's done. I mean, when you consider the class of kids they lost from last year at a Division 7 school, you shouldn't be able to reload just
Right.
like that. But they haven't lost a beat as far as I'm concerned. They are, they might not have some of the, the Logan Nice-Wanders, the Tommy Zerzows this year, but they got guys who are ready to fill those spots.
I watched the most impressive thing that I watched in high school football in the last at least 5 years was the play that Lucas runs probably 12 times a game, the pitch where the quarterback becomes the lead blocker.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why that amazes me so much, but they run that play and I'm like, who does that? Who can do that
you want to try and keep your quarterback out of danger.
Exactly.
Lucas, they're
they
throwing
pitch
him in.
it back, and now since then, in the last couple of years, I've seen more teams now start to do that. But I remember seeing them do that a few years ago, and I'm thinking, why in the heck did you do that? But it doesn't matter what position you play. It doesn't matter. They got tough kids in Lucas, and then with that, you're always going to be in a ball game.
And it's that tough mentality that's gotten them to 6-7 straight playoff appearances, a regional final appearance, a regional semifinal appearance, last year's state final appearance, and possibly a big run. Another team we have to talk about possibly making a big run is the Shelby Whippets.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. The handling of Lucas, the handling of their schedule. They've had a tough game week 1 against Ontario. Ontario driving to tie the game. They get a pick. They go down and score. They've been tested. They've had some injuries that they've bounced back from. The Shelby Whippets are poised to make another run that they had when Brendan Armstrong and Eric Will and all those players were back making regional finals and state semifinal appearances. But I think the Whippets are a really solid team and can make a run this year.
And Rob Mahaney isn't too disappointed that he got a first-round bye because he can have Owen Fisher, rest up and get healthy a little bit. And I think they're about to welcome back Merrick Albert, who's a defensive end that I don't know that you have an answer to, that guy at defensive end. They had some other guys who are a little nicked up. And unlike basketball, this tournament, the higher seed was placed on the bracket. In basketball, the coaches have the opportunity, the higher seeded coaches have an opportunity. Yeah. We want to play a sectional semifinal. This year in the football tournament, that's not a possibility. So those coaches are, of higher seeded teams have a chance for their guys to get healthy. And Shelby will certainly take advantage of that.
And you have to think, too, some of these schools, they do have the opportunity, if they have a bye, they can schedule teams that aren't in the playoffs or stuff like that. So I think, though, just for the terms of you played 6 straight weeks, maybe a week off would help you heal if you're injured or anything like that. But, it's still up to the coaches. If they want to play a game, they can schedule somebody if they want to.
I think for the teams that have first-round byes, they have some pretty high aspirations too, and maybe they're going to take advantage of that bye week to get healthy and not necessarily rush. They're going to spend 2 weeks game planning for whoever it might be.
Well, and I think the important thing about that time that you get is you didn't have so much time in the preseason. Right. So the good programs, I guarantee you, what they're going to be doing with that week of bye is fundamental work, going back to fundamentals, basics, and teaching positions, and that's what the great teams do. They take time to go back to the fundamentals because after the season, you kind of get loose in your fundamental play. This is a great time to have a week without a game where you're working strictly on fundamentals. Your kids are getting better at their individual positions, and thus you're getting better as a team. And I'm sure Shelby, as complete of a team as they are, will take this time and use it wisely to get better at the fundamentals.
Yeah, and a couple more teams that I just think have a good shot at making a run are those Northern 10 teams. You have Colonel Crawford, a 2 seed, they get a bye, and then Winford, a 7 seed, they get a bye, and they'll get the winner of, let me look at the board over here, they get the winner of Willard and Indian Lake. So those 2 teams from the Northern 10 I think have a really good shot. Let's move to our final thing. Any intriguing matchups to you guys? It might not be the first round, but anything down the road as well. Is there anything that intrigues you?
I'm just hoping that Mansfield Senior wins its first round game because I want to see them play Ashland again. That's a rivalry that's gone back for a long, long time. Senior high gave them all they wanted the first time around, and talking to Chioke Bradley, he said, that's a game that we feel we probably should have won. They had some opportunities. And that said, Chioke told me that, we got more out of that loss than maybe Ashland got out of that win. So that's a game I would really like to see in the second round.
And I think that too. I think Mansfield really wants this game. They want an opportunity to play that second round game against a opponent that they know, which normally in the playoffs just doesn't normally happen, especially in the second round. But also, I'm interested to see Ontario in this playoff. A lot of teams are accustomed to being there, but you look at a team like Ontario who has been playing well, and in my eyes has improved week in and week out. And they get a chance to play Vermilion in the first round and have a chance to play in the second round. Who knows how good they'll be by then? You know what I mean? So it'll be interesting to see Ontario, and how I'm intrigued to see how they're going to play and use this postseason to their advantage. Yeah,
and a couple intriguing matchups like you just mentioned. I'd like to see Ontario take on Bellevue.
Yeah.
See how they can perform against them. Another game, Carey Crestview, that'd be a second round game. After watching Carey last night do what they did against Winford, I think that would be a really good matchup. Carey goes on against 25th seeded Montpelier. Crestview takes on 24th seeded Evergreen, so they're pretty much the bottom of the bracket. They're taking those two teams. So a matchup at Carey, those two I'd look forward to watching. And then also Shelby Bellevue for a regional championship. I mean, we had that a couple years ago. That was so exciting, but I think that'd be a fun one to watch.
Yeah, absolutely, and Shelby Clyde maybe someplace down the road there. I mean, there's a lot of really good football teams in that Region 14, and that would be a fun region to watch.
Yeah, but enough talk about the playoffs. We're only a mere days away from everything starting, so hope we got some things worked out to help you get ready for the playoffs. But that'll do it from here at the OH.Report studios. For Effie James, Curt Conrad, thank you very much for sitting in with me tonight, filling in for Brian Skoronsky, who's probably doing the Macarena or something with Eric Will. Also, thanks to Adam Thompson, our director, lower thirds, graphics extraordinary. Great guy who pretty much fixes everything for us around here. But that'll do it from here. My name's Travis Berardi. Thank you for watching Week 6 edition of the Saturday Pigskin. Have a great weekend, folks.